Hey, Zoate discipuli and Zoate omnes. Welcome again to another episode of Latin in Layman's. I'm going to try and make this one a little bit quick, but this is kind of a part two on when we took the word, I think it was copra or puella, and we declined it in all of its cases and numbers in the first declension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of explain it to you as to why we have these cases in Latin and why they correlate with all these endings. Why do we have all these endings in Latin, right? Because we can actually have the word girl that can be iterated through all these cases. I'm only dealing with the singular right here, but we also have the plural as well. And in the plural, I, arum, is, us, is. But that being said, I didn't have enough room on my whiteboard to do so. Again, thank you guys so very much for stopping on by, giving me your time. You could be flipping on over, and I just very much appreciate you guys being here, and I always am, always will be. I also just released a new Spotify podcast or Apple Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts for Latin and Layman's. I did a Q&A, kind of taking a gamut of questions from you guys so far because I want to interact with you guys and just, I had some fun ones that I got to really entertain, got a little heated. I got a little worked up in a couple of questions because I just, had a lot to say. And so if you guys are curious about that kind of stuff, you can pop on over. I actually have already thrown it up on my Instagram story. But with that being said, I won't leave it or I won't ramble bamble any more about that. And it is in two parts. So, yeah, the first one's about 55 minutes. The second one's about 30 minutes long. So, yeah, if you guys want to go check that out, see what kind of questions were asked and what I had to answer them with. Let's get into this now because we have our cases which are nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative. Now, these are all fancy dancy words that we say here. This is grammarian speech, essentially, that just, it means simple things. And that's what I tell my students. It's like, you know what? Might as well entertain the fancy usage. So when you're at a cocktail party, you can whip it on out and refer to the nominative case when you really are just talking about the subject of the sentence. Genitive refers to the possessive noun. Dative refers to indirect object. Accusative refers to direct object. And finally, ablative refers to prepositional phrases and or the object of the preposition. Also, accusative can be the object of the preposition, but we have certain prepositions associated with each. Accusative is going to have dynamic prepositions, aka motion towards, like things like across, over, through, towards, versus things that are static in prepositions like in, on, around, under, from, away from, those kinds of things. So if we etymologically look at the word preposition, if you can see it here, pre, if you guys remember when I did my prefix before with preamble, pregnant, all those other words, that was an episode that I did quite a few days prior, but pre means before, and then positional comes from the Latin positum, which means that which is placed essentially. So a preposition is just that which is placed before, and in this case, the object of the preposition. So there you go. If you didn't know, preposition can also be etymologized. Therefore, with that being said, we're going to look at the Latin usage right now. We're going to use the word puella, and we're going to see how it's iterated, right, with these endings that change the form. Because we have a puella that turns into a puellae in the genitive singular, that turns into a puellae again in the dative singular. These will depend on context when you are actually translating later on in Latin. But for now, we're just going to say that they are same endings, all good in the hood, and move on. And then puellam in the accusative singular, and then finally puella with a macron over the a here in the ablative singular. And now looking at the Latin, we can see as to which these girls would be literally translated within a sentence, right? How would you translate the subject of the sentence girl? Well, in this case, the girl loves food. Yeah, main character of the sentence comes before the verb. What's the direct object? Food. I'm going to make sure that we're still filming. Next one we have here is the genitive singular possessive noun. How am I going to make girl show possession singularly? Well, there are two ways that we can do this back from Latin into English. So if we Englishify that Latin word, we can either do the girl's sister loves food, because in this case, the girls with the ticky mark S, aka the apostrophe S, refers to possession, right? The ownership over the sister, which kind of sounds weird, but it also referred to as a possessive noun adjective, because essentially it's adjectival towards the sister and modifying the sister that is showing possession over. Anyways, it can also be the sister of the girl. So we can either do the ticky mark S, sis, a girl, or we could do of the girl. I know that that sounds kind of weird. It kind of sounds a little bit more poetic, but you could say the sister of the girl loves food, and that would be also genitive possessive noun, showing that possessive quality. Next one we have is dative indirect object, which again has the AE ending. But in this case, my rule is just put a to or for in front, because an indirect object is asking the question as to whom or to, for whom or to whom is the action being done, right? Well, in this case, the boy gives food to or for the girl, essentially. Another example would be the students do their homework for Mr. Connerly, or they do homework for a good grade. See how you just kind of artificially put in that for or that to, that preposition, and that's what's going to help us identify that it is an indirect object. Next one here, the direct object. I don't have a cut and dry rule for this one, but I just say coming after the verb, right? Because it typically does for the most part. Now, that all goes flipped around when we get into the passive voice, but we're here, well, this is active voice, all right? So I'm not trying to get bogged down by anything else. So with that being said, how about the boy loves the girl? And in this case, who is the boy loving? What is the action being done? Loves. And where is it being directed towards? The girl. Skibida bibida bob. And then finally, puella and the prepositional phrase. How would I do this? Well, the ablative is pretty easy, because as we are in the initial Latin phase, you're going to see a preposition associated with that ablative. So in this case, I would say the boy eats food with the girl. And with would be that preposition, the PP, and then the girl would be the OP, the object of the preposition. And together, that makes the sorry about that. With that being said, I don't have much to get into other than that, but I wanted to give you guys some grammar just to show you guys how really, honestly, Latin taught me all of my grammar. I learned zilch grammar from my English classes or my grammar classes. I learned it all through a roundabout way in taking Latin. So if you want to learn more about the words in which we use and how to manipulate them, and just being a little bit more deliberate with your usage of these words, because hey, you know what? If you get further into Latin, you'll understand that we have all of these tenses, we have all of these participial phrases, we have all of these crazy grammatical constructions that we use on a day-to-day basis, but we never know that we are. Might as well know a little bit more, because the more we know, the more we know. The more we know, the more confident we can carry ourselves through this world, right? It's all about knowing more, because knowledge is power. And that's why the Latin word for book is liber, because books make us free. Mic drop. Tempus est discedere.